What's going on? All right, there we go. Hi, everyone. So I'm sorry to the managers and everything about not getting my PowerPoint images last night. The internet went down in Diamond Mountain. So I decided to go to bed. So that's what happened there. So I apologize. All right. So we're in an incredibly intense discussion, and today's class gets worse. So just put on your seatbelt. Just relax. If you don't understand something, good. It'll help you, it'll force you to think about things in a new way. Because today's class, well, first of all, we're going to finish up last week's class because we didn't get done. Please turn on your cameras, please. As I said, please twice. And then we're going to move into a really intense, hello, everyone. Move into a really intense discussion about the mind only's version of emptiness. And what we're going to be exploring is what is the, first of all, why are there different presentations of emptiness? Like, why do we get, why do we learn different things that aren't completely correct while we're supposed to be learning the correct view? Why do we spend so much time focusing on wrong views to get to the correct, if it's, correct is a weird term to say as well. What's why do we spend so much time like having to intellectualize and fight all of these ideas? Why don't you just tell me the real view, Tim? Why did, when Geshe Michael designed these courses, spend so much time in these lower presentations? And the whole idea, and this is one of the places where people, I'd say, some people might criticize the Galupa presentation of emptiness. It's so difficult. Why do you make it so hard? Why are you stuck in your head? You're thinking too much, guys. Stop, right? Don't think too much. And it is a very, at times, a very intellectual approach. And I would say a couple answers to those questions just very quickly. One, I would say there's different paths that go to the same goal. All right. So this is one path which takes you there, where other paths could do the same thing with a different approach. I think if you're particularly attracted to, there's just a particular type of personality type that's attracted to this, right? And honestly, the reason we also give you so many different types of practices is if the intellectual part becomes too difficult, you can move into other practices to stop thinking. I think some of you know this. I think I've been telling some of you this. You think too much. Get out of your head. Bam. Right? Get into your heart. Get into your prana. Feel more. Do less. Right? Because thinking can be an affliction too. And I would also argue on a different note, I might debate that the way that we think about things is already wrong. And I'm just talking about general everyday. Oh, the internet went out last night. I wonder why that happened. Right. I was like, I did all the things, I reset my computer, I reset the router, did all the things that I knew what to do. And then I'm like, why do I have to see the internet going out right now? Most of the time we'll blame the internet. We'll blame Diamond Mountain. We'll blame the battery that ran out at 10:16 p.m. last night to the satellite dish that's for some reason got drained during the day. And so won't come back online till the sun comes up. Oh, it's a battery problem. It's a solar problem. Or I could blame the person in the cottage. They left their lights on all day, or they were using a blender and they drained the battle now, right? Who knows what happened? But that's what we do is we constantly blame others. We blame the outside world. We blame the objects for the problems, right? You blame the world. And you don't blame yourself. Or if you're a really smart practitioner, I have a couple friends like this. They're like, everything comes from me. Yes, true. And then they blame themselves for everything so much that they're self-existently blaming themselves. I know a couple of you do that too. Been thinking about it. How do I stop someone? Oh, look, internet went down. That's awesome. No, that was great. Internet's not very strong today. Um, yeah, how do we not turn the highest worldview into an affliction itself? Oh, it's coming from me, but you somehow take it in a self-existent way. So, and then that has a whole series of guilt and blame and self-flagellating destruction. You get out your whip and you start hitting yourself. I'm such a bad person. Why do I have to see this world like this? You see. So part of what we're doing in this course and what we're doing in all of these discussions of emptiness is trying to retrain our neurons. Okay. And the older you get, the more difficult it gets. Not always. But we're trying to retrain ourselves so we can think differently. And I'm not talking about like pondering, like the philosopher who's pondering the meaning of life, which you can do, which you should do. But it's more just like what goes through your brain, what goes through your head when something happens. What goes through your brain in every single moment of perception? How about that? How do you take things when you open your eyes? How do you take it? Like, how do you understand it? So that level of depth is incredibly difficult to change because every single perception you're having is wrong. And I'm not saying what you're seeing is wrong. It's how you see it. Yes, there is an internet that's not working. Okay. Yes, you're sick today. yes, you have some kind of whatever you have for the day, right? You have someone yelling at you. You're upset about something. Your body hurts. You're hungry, whatever it is. But that's why we come to class. That's why we spend so much time. This is why we try to go through these details, excruciating details, to get to that moment where you can flip that immediate perception. Like at first, you're not going to be able to do that, but then you're going to, at one point, you'll be 2 hours later, or 3 days later, or 10 years later, be like, huh, I wonder why I have to see that. I wonder why I had to see the pen, like, or like, is it a pen or a chew toy? Is there could it have been something else? Could that argument I had with my partner 10 years ago, where I was so correct and righteous, and they were so wrong and they hurt me, could that have been something different? Then you look at the situation differently and you go, maybe, maybe, maybe. And if you still say no, like Alona does, that's why you need this class. Okay. That's why you need these classes, right? Because literally we will say no most of the time. And then as that's it's like going to the gym. As that muscle gets more in shape, the time delay between something happening and you going, oh, it could be something else, or oh, why do I have to experience this way? Meaning, what seed did I plant? Then, then you're like, okay. And then it starts moving faster and faster. And then it becomes like you feel like you're in I don't know, one of those air bouncy homes, where you go in and you bounce on, like, it's for kids for their, like, for birthday parties, that you blow it up and then they go inside and they bounce, right? You just feel like you're being bounced from one side to the other because you're seeing it happen and you're like, no, why? And that's where a lot of people get lost, and they're like, they go, oh, I'm such a bad person. And that's when they start beating themselves up because it gets uncomfortable. It gets uncomfortable, very uncomfortable to be in that place where all this torment, suffering, whatever it is happening in your life happens all at the same time. And it's coming from seeds, but you can't control what's happening and you can't control your reactions to it. Right. And that's what I would call a spiritual crisis. Right. You're stuck. You feel stuck. And there doesn't seem like there's a way out. There are ways out, of course. Actually, you're probably in a good place. If you ever told your teacher about your suffering and they start smiling at you, you have a you're in a good place. Because partially in their mind, they're like, good, now you're working it. Now it's heating up a little bit for you. Now, as long as they don't smile too much and they offer a little bit of consolation, they say, usually they'll say they're sorry and, let's talk about the pain. But normally I watch my teacher do it and it's like, yep, keep going, just keep, you're on the right track. So what we need to do is we need to get into what is wrong with our view so that we can create the new patterns, new neural networks, new chi networks, pranic networks, right? New karmic networks for that matter. And by, just imagine that you're upgrading your operating system. You're all running Windows 3.1 while the rest of the world is running Mac OS Sequoia 10.6, 10.7, what the hell it is. What hell version is this now? Yeah. No, 15, excuse me. 15.0, whatever the hell it is. Okay, numbers, doesn't matter. You're still running the very first popular Windows operating system, 3.1, from 1992. And then all of a sudden you upgrade to like Windows XP and everyone's like, what the fuck? You're like, that's so much better, right? But you still have bugs, right? You need to apply the security updates, right? You see, automatic updates. What eventually happens is you don't have to reboot your operating system from time to time. You just set yourself to automatic update, right? And so you're reprogramming all of you, so that different stories run different. And I don't mean stories like fake stories, different karmic patterns open up for you. And then you don't suffer as much, and the people around you don't suffer as much. That's why we do it. We do it because we're trying to change the pain that we see in other people, the pain that we see in ourselves. And so we need to work at these levels to like crack, like basically we're putting viruses into your program to change the program. All right. Sometimes you have to put a wrench into the machine to stop it, right? Make it blow up a little bit before you can like restart it, and sometimes, they're uncomfortable. Like if you're in that bouncy room going back and forth between why do I have to see this and then also being pissed off or upset or hurt or tormented, right? And then you're tormented by the thought of why me, why me? Like it's uncomfortable as hell, and I know it is. It's not easy. The possibilities of what's on the other side is tremendous if you keep going. My teachers have always said, just keep swimming, right? They just said, just keep going. You could quit, and then all of your good seeds would ripen, and you would have a good life until those karmas wore out. Because you've done incredible good deeds in this life. You've done incredible good things. Then why aren't they ripening, Tim? Why do I have to suffer so much? Because your worldview is messed up, because you're trying to start two lawnmowers in your mind. You're trying to start two engines in your mind. You're pulling the old-fashioned lawnmowers. I know they just start with a push of button these days. I know most of you, but like, you're pulling that string, that rope that get that engine moving, but the gas isn't firing yet, right? So it does get uncomfortable. Why aren't the good seeds ripening? They actually are, and that's what you have to get used to. The good seed is ripening, it's just you're suffering because of it, because you're seeing it wrongly. You have a wrong view towards that good seed of wisdom that's ripening that you're resisting because of years of thinking incorrectly. So that's what we're going to unpack today. Here we go. Actually, let's start this over here. So we were talking last class about what kind of beings there are in this world. And we were talking about the different types of beings that exist. And we divided people into two categories. We divided them very simply into all of us, okay, and very few of us, okay, into sosokewos, normal people, and pakpas, Aryas, those who have seen emptiness directly, right? And I want you to think about what I just said. Most of us, the majority of us, are over here, sosokewos, normal people. And then very few people, and then they become Aryas, okay? Once you see emptiness directly, then you flip over into a totally different type of being. And you don't go back. So what I'd like to make an example of right now, just to pull the metaphor just a little bit longer out of this, is if you're undergoing deep spiritual crisis, right, where you're like trapped between your old views and these new views, and it's just uncomfortable as hell, think about if, I don't know, maybe not all, I want to put this in everyone's category, but think about the nervousness and of not being a virgin and then having your first sexual experience. Like, were you nervous? Were you uncomfortable? Were you like, what's going to happen? What's this going to be like? You don't know what's going to happen. You can imagine it, but you can't actually know what it's like until you do it, right? You can't know. Once you know, right? And of course, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But once you know, but before you know, you make up a lot of things of what you don't know, right? And if you were like me, you thought about it too much. Like we planned everything. If I had been a project manager, I would have made a project management checklist. Do this, do this, do this, and then then you reach the goal, right? But the thing is that once one becomes an Arya, yeah, it was disappointing. Once you see emptiness directly, it will not be disappointing. I promise. It will not be a disappointing thing. I imagine, maybe there is a bit of a disappointment after you see emptiness directly, because then you go back to seeing things incorrectly. You just know you're wrong. So then you probably go into a spiritual crisis anyway at that point. But probably not. So the whole point of what we're doing is to get over that edge, right? It's like in a roller coaster, like you're just sitting there going up the hill, right? And then you need to get over that. Once you get over that edge, and then things just go, right? The roller coaster just goes on its own up and down the hills. After that moment, you have to put all the energy in, but once it goes over, gravity takes care of everything else. So that's what we're trying to do, is build that energy so we can plop over to the other side. So I want to talk a little bit about illusion right now, right? Like we hear this word illusion, Maya in Sanskrit. Like, what do we really mean by Oh, everything's an illusion, right? Good deeds are an illusion. Does that mean we don't do good deeds? Do we stop doing bad deeds? That's not what it means. But you have to understand that if you do a good deed and don't understand how it works, that you could have done a good deed and you planted a good seed and that will create a good deed in the future. Then you're seeing that good deed in a wrong way and it just will create a samsaric result. It'll just create a result that will eventually end. Doing good deeds in ignorance doesn't really help you. Oh, Tim, then why do you give me the vows? Why do you give vows to people who don't understand emptiness? Why do you give vows to people who haven't seen emptiness directly? Because really, if you haven't seen emptiness directly, you're misunderstanding it anyway. We're hijacking the system. Okay. We do all of these things to interrupt the flow of ignorance. And if at the end of the day, you just create nicer people doing nicer things, that's a win. That's a win for Buddhism. Cha-ching, right? It's a win if people just become nicer, I think. Because I really, maybe I'm an optimist, but I really think most people before, and I would imagine people who are not nice people now at some point were, and then they got somehow corrupted. But I believe deep down that people understand the difference between things that create pain and things that create happiness. Down to the level of, I mean, unless you're a total psychopath, like, and don't care at all, and maybe if you choose not to care, but even just driving down this morning from my cottage, the amount of scared animals that, rabbits were hanging out on the road, birds were hanging out on the road, little, like there's like all these ants around, and like none of them want to suffer. They jump out of the way terrified of the big dark monster that's driving really fast and making a lot of noise at them, right? They don't see a car. They see big black monster with two bright white eyes shining out, illuminating their world. That's what they see as a car. And it fucking terrifies them. Right? And you need to be you have to be a complete psychopath to not see the terror. Maybe you never thought about it. But rabbits don't jump out of the way because they're like, take 2 seconds to think about the rabbit's perspective. Right? The ants don't like to be stepped on. Right? They run out of the way. Birds fly out of the way. Humans run out of humans do the same thing. They flee from terror. We're not that different. And I really believe that deep down, everybody wants happiness. Everyone wants the terror to stop. And then they do things to stop the terror, to stop the fear. And that's where ignorance comes in. Do they do things to create more terror, or do they do things to create more happiness? And what happens to a lot of people is they don't recognize enough that other people are suffering in the same way. It's not that they don't recognize it, they just don't recognize it enough. And so then they do things to hurt others, even indirectly, to make themselves feel better. And if by giving the 5 non-virtues or the 5 virtues or the 10, and people become better people and don't understand emptiness, that's still a win because the seeds they're planting will result in a better world. Just blanket, if everybody lived that way, the world would be very different. See, but we're also starting to inject how that reality works into that. And so good and bad deeds, yes, are an illusion in the sense that they are coming from your seeds and they still function. Like the biggest thing that trap that people go into is once they understand where things are coming from, which is the point of the rest of the class, is that they go too far and they think that if nothing has a nature of its own, then it can't exist. Right? So then the illusion is more like they think it's just a magic show. Right? If everything's coming from me, it's just a Patronus from Harry Potter, right? It's just an illusion, a wispy illusion made of smoke. It won't stay. It's just going to go away, right? Doesn't matter. You know, I'm a bad, whatever affliction comes up. All right. So the illusion doesn't mean like this. It's not like, you're creating smoke from things and then turning them into shapes, and then the shapes shift and they don't exist. Okay. The thing to remember is that it's just the way you understand the world, that the way that you take the way that you take it to be is what's wrong. Not that there's a world there. The world is there. It's there. There's chairs, there's people, there's suffering. But it's the way you understand how it's there. It's the how that it's there that's the important, not that it's there. It is there. That's the thing that changes. And if you can change the seeds, you can change the results, right? And I want to thank all of you because I know a lot of you cared and reached out to me. 2 weeks ago, my dad had lymphoma. Last week, he has 2 benign inert tumors. Get it? It was life-ending cancer 2 weeks ago. And then it's benign tumors. The doctor thought they were cancerous, right? Everyone thought it was, right? So the best doctor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, lung cancer doctor, was like, yeah, well, that's interesting. Like, you see, so thank you all very much for your beautiful messages. I really appreciated it. And this is how we should support each other, really. But it's those little things that can change. So the illusion is not, it's not what we think it is. It's not, you have to move yourself out of the extreme. Good and bad deeds do exist, yes. But because they are coming from your past deeds, it's why it's possible to create a perfect world. And it couldn't happen any other way. That's the thing. It couldn't happen any other way. So there's two types of, when we talk about nirvana, like we talk about this place that you're not enlightened yet, but it's this place where you no longer have mental afflictions. You no longer have negativities. You no longer have obstacles to experiencing any negativity within yourself. And it's a cool place you can get to on whichever path you're on, right? You can be as selfish as hell and still reach, I would argue no, but technically in this, you can be on the lower tracks, not have bodhicitta, and reach a level where you no longer have negativities for yourself. Then there's lots of stories about what happens there. I have a heart anyway. What that's not for today's debate. But the idea of nirvana, there's several types of nirvana. You just need to know what they are. So here they are. And it's important to understand why we're doing this. This is why I spend so much time on these things. There's one type of nirvana called natural nirvana. Like Rangshingi Nyangde. Okay. Natural nirvana. The fact that all things, all objects, do not have a nature of their own. Naturally. Okay. Everything has no nature of its own. Nothing does not have a nothing. How do I do this? There's nothing that would have a nature of its own. Okay. Everything is like a blank screen, available depending who's looking at it. I'm in my comfortable bao ma, as we say in Chinese, like precious horse, right? Thanks, Persis. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. You know, in my BMW, right? Comfortable seats, listening to some new music, watching the sunrise, not even rushing down to the, to the lower campus here, relaxing, perfect temperature, perfect morning. But the rabbit doesn't see that. The rabbit sees doom and death and terror coming at them at a rapid speed. Okay. Which Bauma is it? Is it the BMW or is it the scary monster under the bed? Right? It could be anything depending on who's looking. Anything. That's the natural nirvana of every object. Can be anything depending on who's looking. Is it an arrow or is it a bunch of flower petals? Right? Buddha was attacked right before, was attacked, right, by his half brother, shooting arrows at him. Buddha didn't see arrows. Buddha saw flower petals. Wouldn't that be great that every time someone's yelling at you, you just saw flower petals falling out of their mouth, like shooting out of their mouth? Like, oh, that's so beautiful. It looks kind of like weird vomit, but I like that. I could do it. I could handle that. I'd rather flower petals shoot out of someone's mouth than hear them yelling at me. Right? Okay. Think about it. Sandra asked a very interesting question. Anastasia, the answer is Rangshin. That's correct. Rangshin Gi, short Gi. And then the rest is correct. I forgot the Gi in between Xing and after Xing. So Sandra asked an interesting question. Does emptiness have its own emptiness? The emptiness of the emptiness. If every object has emptiness, If all things have emptiness, have natural nirvana, naturally have a state of emptiness, does emptiness have that? What's the emptiness of emptiness? Take it to the cushion, Sandra. Think about it. I'll give you a hint. When you perceive emptiness, your perception is an object, is a thing. Perception is seeing an absence. We'll learn about this in a second, but the object that's perceived is called Yul, and the subject, the perceiver, is called Yul Chen in Tibetan, which means the holder of the object. Okay. You are a subjective state of mind. You are a thing in a way. You are a perceiver of an object. The object is emptiness, but emptiness is an absence. How do you hold on to nothing? Right? Like, how do you hold on to, how do you hold on to nothing? Right? It's not nothing. It's an absence. It's absence of something. Right? It's an absence of things that you think were coming from seeds, but they're not. Excuse me. An absence of things that you believe are not coming from seeds. Okay. So think about the emptiness of emptiness, the natural nirvana of emptiness itself. When we say the word emptiness, is it an absence? I'm going to see emptiness directly. Okay, good luck with that. How do you perceive an absence? How do you perceive something that was never there? Directly. Is it like perceiving the cup? Okay. You can think about it, Sandra. I gave you enough for now. Okay. All right. So the first emptiness is the natural emptiness. Is that the natural empty? Excuse me. The two types of nirvana. The first type of nirvana is the naturally nirvanic. Everything has a naturally nirvanic state, or it includes its emptiness. Okay. Every existing thing includes an emptiness that goes with it naturally. Is it self-existent that it comes naturally with its own emptiness? I'm sorry, translators. It's going to get worse, so just hold on. All right. So the second type of nirvana is called, I call it path nirvana. It's not quite accurate to call it path nirvana. But it's the nirvana that comes through freeing yourself from all negativities, all mental afflictions. And it's achieved by utilizing a path. Okay. To stop the cycle of suffering. Okay. What does that mean? I'll read the definition to you again. This is type of nirvana consists of becoming free of all mental afflictions, the impurity of the mental afflictions. And it must be achieved through the circumstances of utilizing the path. To cut off the process by which in the stream of birth and death, a person circles in the suffering of life. Okay. What it means is there's a path. There's a path that you walk on. right? That's the path. The path takes you to emptiness. It takes you to a place where you can cut off forever all negativities. All right. And that path includes various steps: path of accumulation, path of preparation, right? Path of seeing, directly perceiving the absence that is emptiness. That is an absence of things existing by themselves, including you. The path of habituation, nirvana, and then total enlightenment. Okay, there's a path, right? Because it helps you understand Persis. Persis asks, why are there two kinds of nirvana? Because it helps you understand what nirvana is. Okay. One nirvana is the natural nirvana of all things. The next nirvana is the nirvana you achieve by walking the path where you can actually experience that natural nirvana of things, of yourself and others. Lamrim Chenmo is a path that will help you do that, Julia. The great steps of the path. Okay. All right. I get this question frequently. The next thing we're going to talk about. And it's a natural, get it? It's a natural question that comes up when we talk about this. And it's a natural question that comes up because you have bodhicitta. So it's a good question. It's a frustrating question. And the answer is not very illuminating. It doesn't relieve the tension, but you have to cook it deeply. The question is, if I'm still suffering, I'm getting a divorce, right? I live in a country that's being bombed. I don't know if you guys saw what happened yesterday in Lebanon, but it was effing terrible. 2,800 pagers blew up at the same time. Somebody put bombs in 2,800 pagers. And then I don't care who did it. I don't, it's not important. But somebody thought about 2,800 devices that got shipped to this country and then decided at one time to push the button, and they all blew up at the same time. Was it 20? I don't know how many blew up. I think it was 2,800 were injured. I mean, understand the tremendous number. Like, what the hell's going on? Right? Like, what the heck is going on? Okay, the point is, you see all of this suffering. What the hell is this suffering about, right? So, everyone, I want you to, hey, Kat, come here. Sir. Say hi to Venerable Cotting.
Hi. Who's there? Everybody.
Yeah, this is our ACI 12 class.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. She's one of the primary caretakers here. And if you want to learn cool things about how to practice, come here and stay at Diamond Mountain and learn from her. She knows how to do it. She knows how to do it right. She's super joyful. And she's super joyful in the face of tremendous suffering as well. You know, so, okay, so here's the question. Tremendous suffering in the world. How is it that a Buddha can live? How is it that a Buddha can perceive a perfect world when we're not perceiving that perfect world? That perfect world exists. How can the Buddha project, if everything's coming from seeds, that kind of world where pagers blow up and kill people, injure thousands of people, yet still live in their perfect bubble paradise with flowers and rainbows and unicorns and bliss and happiness, right? How is it that a Buddha can have all of that and then still perceive suffering, right? How is suffering still possible? That's the main question. Everybody asks this question, right? How is it possible if they're still suffering? The Buddha must still be suffering. That's the question, right? Right? The Buddha still must experience the suffering, right? I love AI. It was very difficult to make this picture, by the way, right? Wouldn't the Buddha still be suffering? Because if there still exists this horrendous horror in this world, right? Then therefore the Buddha must be projecting it, and therefore they're not in a paradise. Okay, that's the question. The answer is not very satisfying, but I want you need to cook it. And I said it the other day, last week, 2 weeks ago. The world that the Buddha perceives is perfect. But the Buddha also perceives the world that you perceive and sees the suffering that you see. But the Buddha is not experiencing it themselves. They know how you suffer, but they themselves are not. But that becomes the question, Maria. Maria asked, there you go. Now you're back. Hi. So you have to think about it. And if you have the good fortune of having good enough seeds that you might suspect that somebody in your world is a Buddha, and then you see them suffering, from what side are they suffering? From their side or from your side? So think about it. Meditate on it. If you can crack that code, okay, seriously, if you can crack that, there's something in there that if you play with it, can help start triggering deep experiences of how reality works. All right. So I'm just going to leave you with that. The idea of suffering has its own nirvana. Okay. Suffering naturally has its own emptiness. And the answer is in there. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to this idea of illusion. Okay. The illusion that we're talking about here is that the way things appear and the way they are is inconsistent. There's a discrepancy between the way things appear to you, to us, and that the way that they really are. Okay. That's why we always talk about magic. That's why we talk about these things, so that we can at least get some kind of feeling for it, right? When you go to a magic show, you see really cool things. You're like, oh, that's really neat. But at the end of the day, you know there's something not real about it, right? Sorry, guys, all of it's that way. That's the best part. Everything is that way. Okay. So we're going to be getting into a deep discussion now of the mind-only school. So put on your seatbelts and relax. Just get in the car, watch the beautiful sunrise, sunset, wherever you are. Translators, good luck. Just say the words, even if you don't understand them. So what we need to understand is, what does illusion mean in each of the schools? And that's the most important part. We're going to take a step into the mind-only school, and I'm going to go slow. If this takes us 12 classes to get through versus 10, we're just going to do it. Okay. So it doesn't matter how long it takes us to get there. There is no there anyway. There is no there that doesn't have a natural nirvana of its own. Get it? There is no direct perception of emptiness from its own side. All right. So we need to understand what the illusion means in the mind-only school. All right. Took me a while to get this to work properly. So hold on just one second. So in the mind-only school, the way that the mind-only school, which is the school below the middle way, and by the way, Jason Kappa says a middle way, a mind-only understanding is enough, is sufficient, okay, to have deep realizations. So there's something cool about it. That's why we learn it. So this tree here represents the illusion in mind-only school. All right. So I made a fun picture here. All right. There's something going on here. There's an illusion here. All right. And the way the illusion works in the mind-only school is that one seed creates two things. That's why the tree has two parts. All right. One seed, that tree came from one seed. And it has two parts. One part is you, the perceiver, and the other part is the object, the thing perceived. Okay. Like one side is the perceiver, you, the other side is the blue that you perceive, or the cup, or the suffering you perceive, something like that. Okay. But the illusion is that you believe that they are not of the same substance. You believe that they are separate. You perceive it that way so deeply that they are separate into two things. But the illusion, that separateness is an illusion, because the mind-only school will say that it comes from the same seed. They're made of the same stuff, same substance, both object and subject. And that's what they mean by illusion in the mind-only school. Now, it's going to take us a little while to get through this, so just relax. Okay. What do you mean they're from the same substance? All right. So we're going to go a little deeper into that. Let's see, what did you guys say in the chat? Okay, you guys can debate yourself. All right. So let's go a little deeper. You have object, right? And in Tibetan, that word for one of the words for objects is yul. All right. That's the object side. That's the stuff you see, right? The other side is called, the other thing is the subject, the perceiver. And in Tibetan, we call it the yulchen, the holder, the possessor of the object. All right. So you can see that the way we define subjects and objects are very deeply related in Tibetan. And so how do we understand this in the mind only school? How is it that subject and object are made of the same substance? I'm sorry, the first contradiction that comes up in my mind is, how is me from the same substance as this espresso cup, right? Or whatever object you're looking at. Do you have an apple in your room? I don't know. A ring, your computer, right? How is that made of the same substance? So what the mind only school says, and I think many of you have studied this, so it makes it a little bit easier. And so the gist of it is that when the seed opens, you're only looking at the seed opening in your mind. When the seed opens for coffee cup, you take it as an external coffee cup. You take it, you hold it as an external coffee cup. All right. But what actually is going on is the seed is opening in your mind, and you're seeing the seed open in your mind as coffee cup. But you mistake the seed opening in your mind for an external coffee cup, and that's the illusion. And you can see it's not very far away from middle way. But we're going to stick here. We're going to stay here in the mind only school. I'm going to blend them together a little bit, so you might have to separate them later in your own meditation. So you, in the mind only school, they say, and it gets more complicated than this, go to Mixed Nuts. Go on YouTube, watch Wordsmith's book, The Difficult Points of the Mind Only School. Book number 1 is done. Go buy it. And then we're working on book number 2. Okay. And you understand all the different consciousnesses and all that other stuff. We're not going to go in there today. But the mind only school says the subject and the object are the same substance. They're in their same substance of mind. So the seed opens, and then you're looking at the coffee cup image of the seed that's in your mind, and you mistake that for the coffee cup that's outside of you. And that's the illusion. The subject and the object are from the same substance. Okay, why are we talking about this? Okay. It's very close to middle way. Very close. But that's what you're looking at in your mind. And then it comes up with a whole series of problems. What are some of those problems? So the problem that we're going to address is how does the self perceive itself in the mind only school? And this is very important actually to understand how you can see emptiness directly. That's why it's important. So just stick with it. You're like, why are we talking about it? Just stick with it. So the question comes up. Okay, great. I can get behind the idea that the subject and object are from the same seed. And I'm mistaking the seed opening in my mind as the external thing and think the external thing is there by itself. Where it wasn't ever there to begin with, it's only in my mind. They don't deny, mind only school doesn't deny outer objects entirely, but it's saying that you're mainly organizing yourself in your mind only. That's why it's called mind only. So the question comes up, great, I can get behind that. That kind of makes sense. But then how does the self perceive the self? How do you say me in this system? Okay. So the mind only school will say, is that there is a state of mind that sees both the other object. It can confirm it's a state of mind that can see what's going on and see that there's an illusion happening and can see the mind itself. So they say there's a state of mind, like sort of like in meditation, when you have a state of mind that's watching your mind, Geshe, right? The state of mind that's checking the state of mind. The state of mind that's checking the quality of your mind to see if you have too much dullness or too much agitation. So what they're saying is that there's a state of mind that can see, oh, I can see that there's an illusion happening and can see every other state of mind. Right? So there's a part of your mind that sees the whole mind. Kind of like that, Alona. It's like there's an awareness of self-perception. So there's a part of the mind that sees what's going on in the mind, which kind of, I think we kind of say that, right? It's not very far from the way we perceive ourselves, right? I can say, I'm feeling happy. Let me think about that. I'm perceiving myself as happy, or I'm perceiving myself as tired, rubbing my eyes, or I'm perceiving myself as hungry, or whatever's going on. Like, I think that's what we would say. I can say that about me. Me is me. And I can describe me. I can make me the object of me. Okay. Sorry, translators. It's going to get rough. Right? Me sees me. Like, I have a perception of me. No problem. Subject, object. There's a subjective state of mind that sees the object of me. No problem. That's what we think. But if you think about it just a little bit, just for 2 seconds, it makes no sense. Something's fishy about this. How can a part of me see me? How could part of me see whole of me while part of me is looking at the whole, but the part that's looking at the whole is separated from the whole looking at the whole? I'll say it again a little slower. Sorry. I knew as soon as I said it louder that it was going to be a disaster. Okay. How can a part of me, which is a part of the whole, a part of the totality of me, ever make a claim that I'm looking at me, the whole of me. It's impossible. But the mind only school says that's what happens. And if you really look at your general experience, you can confirm that. Like, that's kind of what it feels like. So it brings into question what the hell is going on. What the heck is going on here? You know, how can you, there's other proofs of how there was a subject there. We'll talk about that in a moment. But there's something going on there that is actually very profound and very helpful, pushing you towards what the direct perception of emptiness would be. How is it even possible that you can see yourself and then call it yourself and not have a problem with that? That's Nagarjuna. There's something fishy going on here. How can part of you look at all of you if it's a part looking at something else? It's self-referential. But our general experience is like that. And so we don't even question it. We're like, oh, yeah, that's great. But that's the reason why you suffer. Okay. That's the reason why you keep putting those ignorant seeds in the karmic bank accounts. You see a me, you think you're seeing yourself, and then you take it for yourself. You think you're looking at you, and you take it to be you. But how does you see you? In the mind only school, there's a problem. That's why the question persists of what natural nirvana is so important. The you that you think you are is not you. Yes, you can still function. Yes, you drink your coffee. Yes, you go to breakfast. Yes, you go to work. Yes, you sit on Zoom. All of those things, yes, are happening. But once you start squeezing it a little bit, like, you start squeezing, if you squeeze a lemon enough, eventually the juice will come out, even if you don't like peel the skin off of it, right? Right. And the juice will shoot out, right? If you squeeze this long enough, my boss used to say, is the juice worth the squeeze? Meaning the amount of effort you need to put in to get the juice out of the lemon or the orange, was it worth it? Meaning, did you have to put more work in for the result that you got? And I'm going to say the juice is worth the squeeze in this case. Squeeze your understanding of who you think you are. How could you see you? It's impossible. But Tim, I see it all the time. And that's why you suffer. As he cutely smiles. So it's not a waste of time question. It took me a long time to prepare this class. This is actually, I would say this is probably the hardest class I've ever prepared. By the way, as a teacher, if you don't understand something, just admit it. All right. And there's a reason why I skipped part of this class and come back to it, is because I don't fully understand what is going to come out of my mouth. I need to meditate more on it. So I'll be honest about it. Like, I was like, I have no idea how to teach this. Okay, well, I'm going to meditate on it. I'm going into retreat for 3 days, 4 days. I'll figure it out. And worst comes to worst, I'll just read the transcript from the original class. and just tell you guys this is what was said, right? So I don't mess it up. But the idea is it's an incredibly profound question to ask. How can you see you? How could a part of you see all of you? Just like the coffee cup. Do you see the back of the coffee cup? Does it have a back? Maybe it's a whole universe of glorious paradise on the other side of this cup, and you just can't see it because your mind created a perfect image of a cup in it when you saw the parts, colors, and shapes of this object. You see a full cup. There's no cup here. Where's the cup? It's in your mind. Why? Because the seed opened up as a perfect cup in your mind. You never saw the cup. You never saw you. Same thing. I'm so excited about the next picture. I've been waiting all class to show it to you guys. Okay. You guys are seeing a sword, right? A Jedi sword. A sword cannot cut itself, right? You can have the best Jedi laser gun in the world. Well, laser sword, kyber crystal sword, excuse me. Right? You can get your ninja swords out. You can get your samurai swords out. You can get your Knights of the Round Table swords out. I don't care. The sword can't cut itself. Impossible. All right. This is proof number one of why the mind can't perceive itself, even if it pretends to. All right. So excited about that picture. You won't forget it either. The mind cannot see itself. Just like a sword can't cut itself. And the quote is, you need to have it for your homework. Where's the quote? The Buddha himself said, the mind can't see mind. The mind is the same as the blade of sword, which could never cut itself. All right. That's kind of our first proof. All right. Oh, Persis, that's a good question. Take that into meditation. Persis asked, is this an extreme view? The mind can't see itself. I would say a mind that claims to see itself would be an extreme view. Me can see me. That would be an extreme view. Because it's mired in self-existence. It thinks there's a me there that was never there. Anyhow, it's not hopeless. It's the opposite of hopeless. And that's where I ran out of pictures, guys, because my internet went out. So we're just going to keep going without pictures. We only have 8 minutes anyway. So the second example that they use to counter this is a lamp doesn't illuminate itself. The lamp is the source of light, but the lamp does not illuminate itself. The only way the lamp gets illuminated from the light it emits is if the light reflects back onto it from something else. but it sure as hell looks like that lamp is illuminating itself. Turn on the light, you can see the lamp. If you meditate, just take that into your meditation. Where does the light come from? Where's the source of the light that's illuminating the lamp in the room? And lastly, the other example is darkness doesn't cover itself in darkness. Because if darkness covered itself and made itself dark, you wouldn't be able to see dark. Okay. You have to think about it. It's you're like, everyone's like, what the fuck is that? Yes, meditate on it. Darkness doesn't shroud itself in darkness, because if darkness shrouded itself in darkness, you couldn't see dark. There wouldn't be anything there to see. Wait, but isn't darkness the absence of light? I'm going to let you guys think about that. I'm done talking about that. The text says, just because it's in the homework, Kachik, one might claim it's just like a lamp that illuminates the thing itself. A lamp which illuminates itself. But a lamp is not illuminated for the reason that no such thing as darkness shrouding. I just read it. I'll just copy it and then put it in the chat, and you guys can put it on your homework. It's one of the homework questions. Oh, that's interesting. Blank. Ah, there you go. There's the text. It's blank. And I'll put it on the screen, which is probably the better place to put it, because people who watch this later, that's a better place to put that. And that's the answer to one of the homework questions, which I just explained. Okay. So you have to think about that. All right. So just for your homework, and I've said it, but I'm just going to say it again for your homework, is that what is the definition of a self-perception of the mind by the mind-only school? Here's the definition. It's a state of mind which only focuses inwards, which is a discrete subject state of mind, okay? Which just means it's a subject. This is what they say. This is the most important part, where the sense of duality between subject and object is absent. Okay, so it's a state of mind. Oh, it actually showed up. That's interesting. It was just slow. Oh, that was actually you, Anastasia. Thank you. It's a state of mind where the duality, subject and object, collapses and it's absent. And when that is absent, then that's the mind that can see itself. Okay, where this duality here between subject and object collapses, no longer exists, and that is the part of the mind that sees everything else, that sees itself. Which is kind of, sounds like it's approaching a direct perception of emptiness, but that's not what they're saying. They're just saying there's a state of mind where subject and object are collapsed and therefore can see the mind. Again, think about it. It doesn't really make any sense, but it's extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. And I cleverly didn't get to the part that I have to prepare for next week. So we're doing pretty well. Just need to think a little bit more about it. And then what we're going to do beginning of next class is that the mind only school and the upper middle way school are going to have a debate. And the debate that they're going to have centers on the idea that how do they understand deceptive and ultimate reality? Where they basically say that the mind only school says if you say nothing has a nature of its own, then nothing can exist. That's the criticism. Mind only school says to the upper middle way, you say nothing has a nature of its own. So therefore, what you're actually saying is nothing exists at all. And so that becomes the debate between the two. And the resolution of the debate is that the mind only, or the middle way school comes back and says, the thing that you criticized us for to prove inaccurately our position is actually the same thing that proves why your position is inaccurate. So if you're going to make this claim about us, that claim actually applies to you too. And so you've just chased your tail and you're done. Like you just basically are an idiot. That's not the words they use, but you can't see that your own argument applies to you too. You shoot yourself in the foot, right? Chase your own tail. That's the result of the argument. They claim that the middle way school, when they say nothing has a nature of its own, mind only says, then therefore nothing can exist. And the argument they use, the upper middle way school says, well, when you apply the same argument to you, we come to the same conclusion. Now, what's between the two? Stay tuned for next week. We will figure out what's happening in those two. AKA, we ran out of time, but I'll just be honest about it. I don't understand it 100%. So I want to present that last. So if you can really understand why, when the middle way school says nothing has a nature of its own, does not mean that things don't exist. And that's where most of us get into a problem. And that's why we started the class the way we did. Because the problem is that you go to an extreme. No, Ananda, that's not the mind only school. That's the lower middle way school. The 50-50 school is lower middle way, the independent school. So to be continued next week. I know this is difficult, but if you struggle with these ideas, you can really, really start cracking that code. The struggling with the ideas is putting a virus into your operating system. And if you don't like the idea of a virus, then just imagine you're just downloading the next operating system. And the installation is taking some time. You get that like circle of death, like when everything freezes up. It's kind of like that. You're installing. Don't turn off the computer while installing, right? You can screw things up. So just take your time with it and see if you can enjoy it. Take some of these arguments that kind of made sense to you or something that you stuck with and take it into your meditation and see what you pull from it. Because the words themselves, the arguments themselves, don't have a power, but they point to the power inside of, how do I say this? The words themselves don't have the power, but they interrupt the way of thinking so that you can see how reality actually is created for yourself. And hopefully I do really wish that you all can get there. I really do. All right. Thank you all for joining today. Very much appreciated. And I also have to apologize that I only found out last night that the schedule changed and Geshe Michael's teaching here at Diamond Mountain at 8 o'clock. So unfortunately, I will be canceling our overly enjoyable translation class on meditation and the steps on the path. So I apologize in advance. Well, I apologize with 30 minutes notice that I will not be coming to that class. If the tech team or one of you can just stay around or inform everybody that unfortunately it is canceled, just so people don't freak out. Or you all can just stay online and have a Dharma chat. That might be a cool idea too. But thank you all for joining today. I know that was a really hard class. It clears up later on, I promise. But if you can if you can crack that code, you can really, you have the possibility of really changing the world. So thank you all very much. Thanks, translators. Thanks for struggling. Thanks for offering all of this. Thank you, tech people. And yeah, just keep upgrading, Mike. Good job. All right. I'll see you all later. Have a good day. And say goodbye to everyone, to each other, please.
Gracias, Tim.
Gracias, Maestro Tim. Thank you
Goodbye.
very
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, bye.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you. Bye.
Please stay.
Thank you, Tim. Please stay.
Thank you, Tim. Bye.
I'm Octavian. I have an answer. Oh, I don't know if he left.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Geshe Michael sent me the emails that you sent to him, and
Cool.
we're putting together a plan soon. So stay
Okay.
tuned.
Let me know when you're free. We'll talk. Sure. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.
We will stay.